The Companies Act of 1956. Section 44. Prospectus or Statement in lieu of prospectus, to be filed by private company on ceasing to be private company. A private company on ceasing to be private company needs to submit to the registrar prospectus or statement in lieu of prospectus, either of them, prospectus or statement in lieu of prospectus. A private company need to be filed with the registrar on ceasing to be private company. Provisions of Section 44 of the Companies Act 1956 focus its attention in enabling us to understand. Subsection 1 of Section 44. If a private company alters its articles in such a manner that they no longer include the provisions which under Clause 3 of Subsection 1 of Section 3 are required to be included in the articles of a company, in order to constitute a private company, the company shall, as on the date of the alteration, cease to be a private company. So, a company being a private company alters its articles in such a manner that they no longer include the provisions you can recollect very well, those provisions which are available in Clause 3 of Subsection 1 of Section 3. If the very provisions gets altered, such a private company shall cease to be a private company on the date of alteration itself, and shall within a period of 30 days after the said date file with the registrar either a prospectus or a statement in lieu of prospectus as specified in subsection 2. Here subsection 1 of section 44 trying to help us to understand if the conditions or if the provisions which are required to be incorporated or to be included in articles of association of a private company. Which provisions? You can recollect provisions are the conditions refer in Clause 3 of subsection 1 of section 3. These provisions are included or gets included in articles of association of every private company. If at all any alteration takes place to any condition mentioned or refer in Clause 3 of subsection 1 of section 3, from the date of alteration itself, such a private company shall cease to be a private company and shall file with the registrar either a prospectus or a statement in lieu of prospectus within a period of 30 days after the said date or after the said alteration take place. Let us refresh ourselves. Being a private company, if a company alters its articles in such a manner that they no longer include the provisions which under Clause 3 of subsection 1 of section 3 are required to be included in the articles of a company in order to constitute a private company, such a company shall cease to be a private company. So on alteration of any such provisions included in the articles of association of a private company, such private company shall cease to be a private company. So, and immediately it shall file with the registrar either a prospectus or a statement in lieu of prospectus as specified in subsection 2. If being a private company, if it alters its articles in such a manner that they no longer include the provisions which are required to be included in the articles of a company in order to constitute a private company, such a private company shall cease to be a private company, and such a private company shall also file with the registrar either a prospectus or a statement in lieu of prospectus as specified in subsection 2, within a period of 30 days after such date or after such alteration takes place. Let us go to subsection 2 of section 44. Yes, you are right. Subsection 2 was referred in subsection 1 of section 44 also, when it was referring about prospectus or statement in lieu of prospectus. It was telling us as specified in subsection 2. So what is specified in subsection 2 of section 44 we may understand now. Subsection 2 of section 44 regarding prospectus or a statement in lieu of prospectus. Every prospectus filed under subsection 1 of section 44 shall state the matter specified in part 1 of schedule 2 and set out the report specified in part 2 of that schedule, and the said parts 1 and 2 shall have effect subject to the provisions contained in part 3 of that schedule. That schedule means schedule 2. So clause A of subsection 2 of section 44 says here, every prospectus filed under subsection 1 shall state what the matter specified in part 1 of schedule 2, and also it shall set out the report specified in part 2 of that schedule. That schedule means again the schedule, the very schedule 2, and also the said parts 1 and 2 shall have effect subject to the provisions contained in part 3 of that schedule. Let us go to clause B of subsection 2. Every statement in lieu of prospectus now is focusing on statement in lieu of the prospectus. Clause A was referring prospectus, whereas clause B is taking into consideration about statement in lieu of prospectus. Every prospectus in lieu of prospectus filed under subsection 1 shall be in the form and contain the particulars set out in part 1 of schedule 4, and in the cases mentioned in part 2 of that schedule shall set out the reports specified therein, and the said parts 1 and 2 shall have effect subject to the provisions contained in part 3 of that schedule. So clause A was enabling us to understand, in case private company files prospectus, what should we do? It is telling us every prospectus file, every prospectus underline here, every prospectus file under subsection 1 shall state the matters specified in part 1 of schedule 2 and set out the reports specified in part 2 of that schedule, and the said parts 1 and 2 shall have effect subject to the provisions contained in part 3 of that schedule. So regarding prospectus we come across. Now let us go, if it has not filed prospectus but it filed statement in lieu of prospectus, let us understand what clause B of subsection 2 says. Every statement in lieu of prospectus filed under subsection 1 shall be in the form and contain the particulars set out in part 1 of schedule 4, and in the cases mentioned in part 2 of that schedule shall set out the reports specified therein, and the said parts 1 and 2 shall have effect subject to the provisions contained in part 3 of that schedule. Let us go to clause C of subsection 2 of section 44, where the persons making such a report as is referred in clause A or clause B of subsection 2 have made therein, or have, without giving the regions indicated therein, any such adjustments as are mentioned in clause 32 of schedule 2 or clause 5 of schedule 4, as the case may be, the prospectus or statement in lieu of prospectus filed as aforesaid shall have endorsed thereon or attached thereto a written statement signed by those persons setting out the adjustments and giving the reasons therefore. So regarding adjustments, if it take place, what should we do? We come across in subclass in class C of subsection 2. Let us go to subsection 3 of section 44. If default is made in complying with subsection 1 or subsection 2. If default is made in complying with subsection 1 or subsection 2, the company and every officer of the company who is in default shall be punishable with fine which may extend to 5,000 rupees for every day which the default continues. So here, if default take place, what would be the punishment? Who are going to get punished? Here, the company and every officer of the company both shall be punishable with fine which may extend to 5,000 rupees for every day during which the default continues. Subsection 3 of section 44. If default is made in complying with subsection 1 or subsection 2 of section 44, the company and every officer of the company who is in default shall be punishable with fine which may extend to 5,000 rupees for every day during which the default continues. Let us go to subsection 4. Where any prospectus or statement in lieu of prospectus filed under this section includes any untrue statement, underline. If it includes any untrue statement, any person who authorizes the filing of such prospectus or statement shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 2 years or with fine which may extend to 50,000 rupees or with both, unless he proves either that the statement was immaterial or that he had a reasonable ground to believe and did up to the time of the filing of the prospectus or statement believe that the statement was true. So subsection 4 says, where the prospectus or statement in lieu of prospectus filed under this section includes any untrue statement, any person who authorizes the filing of such prospectus or such statement shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 2 years or with fine which may extend to 50,000 rupees or with both. So there is one facility, unless he proves he can escape this punishment, this fine, if he proves either that the statement was immaterial or that he had reasonable ground to believe and did up to the time of the filing of the prospectus or statement believe that the statement was true. Subsection 5. For the purposes of this section, a statement included in the prospectus or a statement in lieu of prospectus shall be deemed to be untrue if it is misleading in the form and context in which it is included. And for the purposes of this section, where the omission from a prospectus or a statement or in lieu of prospectus of any matter is calculated to mislead, the prospectus or statement in lieu of prospectus shall be deemed, in respect of such omission, to be a prospectus or a statement in lieu of prospectus in which an untrue statement is included. So if any information is missing from prospectus or from the statement of prospectus and it is proved it is untrue, in such a situation, provision subsection 5 of section of this section enables us to understand. Let us go to subsection 6. For the purposes of subsection 4 and clause A of subsection 5, the expressions included when used with reference to a prospectus or statement in lieu of prospectus means included in the prospectus or statement in lieu of prospectus itself and contained in any report or memorandum appearing on the face thereof or by reference therein.